So, Tim, what are your thoughts about work-life balance?
It's not real, quite honestly.
Thank you, guys. No.
Yeah.
Balance doesn't mean equal.
Exactly,
and that's what
yeah.
most men miss. And they're trying to get it to equal, not rather than balance. Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. Today, we're going to talk about work-life balance. And stick to the end of this podcast or the show, and we'll give you a couple things that you can do to take away so that you can have more balance in your life right away. So, Tim, what are your thoughts about work-life balance?
It's not real, quite honestly.
Thank you, guys. No.
Yeah. Well, it's a fallacy, right? I think you can have a rhythm and there's going to be seasons. And in my experience personally, and with the men, there's always going to be an ebb and a flow. And the biggest thing, and this may sound cliche, is being able to communicate clearly with your partner so you can accurately set expectations of what work may be like for a certain period or whatever it may be. Because it's always going to be changing. If you are the kind of guy that loves to grow, that loves to challenge himself and grow through the challenge like we do, we love to take on big projects and big tasks, and we have a big vision of helping a lot of men, and it just doesn't fall into a 9 to 5. It just doesn't. I remember Amelia saying to me, you've heard me say this before, but I just found it so poignant when she said it. Hey, I don't think you get it. I'm with you in spite of your business, not because of it. And I'm like, damn.
That's a great point.
Oh, yeah. She's like, look, you don't know what it's like to be with a guy like you. You don't know how secure I have to be in my own self because I sometimes get picked at the business, sometimes gets chosen over me. Obviously, we see it as a movement. She sees it different. But it's true, right? And so the idea of balance is just a fallacy, but rhythms, seasons, and being able to make sure that you continue to have certain rocks or pillars in place in your own life to support that flow and that rhythm are really important. For example, the ARS, right? And that may ebb and flow and that may change each day. Some days you'll have longer to do it. ARS, Alpha, Rise and Shine. It's a morning routine that we give the men in the program. And for me, sometimes I have longer, sometimes I have less. But I know one of the key things for me is journaling. I have to journal because when I journal, I get clarity. I'm able to process certain thoughts or emotions or whatever it may be. And the clarity is the thing that really shifts my mood. And sometimes that can be enough to then just help me go into my day and just feel a bit better, right? Other days I'll be able to get longer and I'll be able to get my journaling, breath work, and a bit of meditation. So having that flexibility as well is key, as you know. And then with Amelia, I know I've got to be spending at least a couple of hours, few hours twice a week. Quality time is what she wants, not quantity. Me finishing work and being tired or exhausted and hanging out with her, that's not going to cut it. So if during these busy seasons, let's say, that's what I'm relying on, I know I'm going to get in trouble in the relationship. I know it's not going to work well. It's not going to lead to a good place. However, if I make sure that on a Saturday afternoon we go for a walk on the beach together, that's when we connect the most. When we're walking, we'll talk, we'll laugh, we'll talk about goals and plans and things that are coming up. So if I really commit and make sure I've got one or two of those in a week with her, then that's enough, right? It doesn't have to be a full-on weekend or anything like that. And the same with my health. I know there's certain minimum standards I've got to be doing in my health. I have to be working out. Doesn't have to be every day, but I got to be active. And that's, if I just do those minimums, it really helps me to have a rhythm during busy seasons. But for me to try and expect that every day I'm going to have this nice idyllic balance where I'm going to do a nice full Alpha, Rise and Shine every single day and get to work out every day and get to have a Amelia every day. And it's unrealistic. And then my expectations are off, stresses me out. I start to feel frustrated and it just doesn't work. So having that fluidity and flexibility, in my opinion, has worked really well for me. And I've seen it serve the guys very well as well.
Yeah, I think what throws most people off here is the word balance, right? So the way I look at it is a little bit differently. When I think of balance, is you're balancing things in the correct ratios. Those ratios can be for seasons. However, work might be 60%, right? So it's not, balance doesn't mean equal.
Exactly.
And that's what most men miss. And they're trying to get it to equal, not rather than balance. And so when I think about my life and the men that we work with, really, what I think the first thing to do is kind of an old Stephen Covey thing. Stephen Covey wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Is look at the roles that you have in your life, right? So for me, it's husband, father, business owner, coach, et cetera. Going down that list, and you can go down and you can make this list super long, like brother, son, but the key ones that are in your life, and look at where you want the ratio of your time to be spent, right? And look at where you want that to be, quote, balanced. And be realistic with it, right? So if you're a CEO of a Fortune 200 company, it's not like you're going to be, 10% work. You're going to be working, right? If you want to maintain as CEO of that company. But look at what your roles are and then start carving out what percentages of your time they want to be. It doesn't mean you're going to move them in that direction right away. But as I always say, show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. And so this is legitimate for the guys listening to this right now. I would love for you to do this now, but I also know you're not going to, but I'll say it anyway, is open your calendar right now, hit pause, open your calendar, whether it be Outlook, Google Calendar, whatever it is that you use, and look at what's on your calendar. What are the ratios? Is it 100% work? Do you have family in there? Do you have kids events, sporting events, school plays, and all that? Do you have your workouts? What's in there for you? And then start looking at where do you want it to be. And a great exercise, at least for me, is a version of the rocking chair test. So it doesn't have to, the rocking chair test is a classic example, but I'll use it for 10 years in the future. So I'm 46 as we record this now. So when I'm 56, where would have, looking back to the 46-year-old Doug, where would I have wanted my ratios to be, right? And is that realistic, right? So if I go, I want it to be 100% family. Okay. Well, that means no more growth unless I have some kind of supplemental income coming in. Like, where's the money to come in? So you got to be realistic with it, but you also got to be a bit of a dreamer. Where do you really want when you're looking back at it? What are the important things? And start with there. And that allows you to create your, quote, balance, right? Because my mind's eye, I'm picturing like these blocks my kids have, they stack things on. Not all the blocks are equal, but they balance them as they're going up. And that's what balance means to me, is really creating that, for your point, going on a walk with Amelia could be I want that to be a rock that's in that. So that's going to be 30% of my time or whatever you may say. And now you can carve out your calendar to make sure that reflects it. So that day is guaranteed with ebb and flow. There's going to be days it's not going to work out, but you're going to be able to have that balance. And all too often, businessmen become firefighters in their business. And when they say I'm out of balance, they really don't know what that means. They're just doing a to-do list, right? They haven't figured out what's important. They kind of know what's important to them, but they haven't sat down and consciously thought, to what level is this important to me?
Makes me think of the not to-do list, right? I think that's relevant in this topic.
Yeah.
What should you not do if you want to have this, to your point, rocking chair test? Yeah. If you know where you're headed and you want to have a certain experience at a certain point in time, well, what do you get to not do right now, essentially? Because, I think it's so easy as business owners to get sucked into this firefighting mode where everything seems important and urgent when it isn't. Let's just be real. And at the same time, then just become busy, not effective, but busy. And the likelihood is, if you actually looked at your calendar and looked at where you're spending your time, what can only be done by you and what's really going to move the needle.
Yep.
And typically it's a few things. And then the other things just come down to control, right? The need to control certain things, it's not going to be as good as what I could do, or whatever story it is the business owner tells themselves. And, I'm still learning that. I think we all are. It's a journey, right? Still coming to terms and peace and reminding myself that people are not going to do it as good as me. That's fine because they're going to do it good enough. And sometimes you do it better than me. They do it differently. And that's awesome, right? We want that. But if I'm in a position where I'm craving control or I don't trust people or whatever it may be, I'm then going to take more on unnecessarily, which will then mean something's got to give elsewhere, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so part of this, I think the first part is figuring out what you want, right? That's number one for all of us. You know, I can't help but think of my own self and where I'm out of balance in this conversation currently with me, right? Of where I want to be. And that goes to the seasons thing, right? I'm in a season where I've made this commitment. I've communicated it, to your point, to my partner, Erin, my wife, and also my kids who don't get it, but you know, they're young. And when you look at this, though, there also becomes an area of setting boundaries. I think boundaries are critically important. And that's where it's something that most men just don't know how to do properly. I certainly didn't back in, 10 years ago when I started this journey in my relationship, in my marriage, is setting those boundaries firmly yet lovingly, right? It's a very different thing than just setting it firmly. Yeah. Or covert contracts, another big thing. We don't have to talk about those, but setting boundaries of how are you going to stay in the lane? Because the guys that we work with, so most of the guys listening to this, work is their forte. Like that one's going to take over more times than not. Their problem isn't, oh, I'm spending too much time with my kids. Oh, I'm spending too much time with my wife. Oh, I'm doing too much fun.
No.
Most of them forgot how to have fun, right? And so the problem becomes they're working too much. So how do you parlay that into what they really want? And that is really the question for these guys. We have a thing called the chart of intentional living for businessmen. We call it the COIL for short. So it's chart of intentional living. The key thing within that planning mechanism is intentional, right? People aren't intentional. There's a million planning systems out there. You can use whatever you want. We use the COIL because it works for our guys. But you have to plan, right? It's that old quote, failing to plan is planning to fail. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle with this work-life balance. Also, I'll continue on here because I think this is a key thing that I learned myself that a lot of guys, when I talk to them, just haven't picked up yet, is sit down with your partner and talk to them about what they want. So for me, for my wife, sitting down with Erin and saying, what do we want our life to look at? Because like Amelia, one time I threw at her this whole idea like, well, I'm working my ass off. I'm doing all these things. And she's like, no, you're doing your business for you. Like, oh, she's right. And this is when I had 3 companies, and I was doing a lot of consulting and coaching. So I was doing all this work, providing a great living for everybody. And it was stuff I want to do. If I asked her what she wanted, it would have been more time with me.
Yep.
Right? Less money, more time with me. She spends the money, and that's not a problem. But she should. And she should, right? Because we have it. The point is really sitting down, figuring out what we want to do. So I take my wife on dates, and then eventually I plan these topics coming up, know what we want to do, explain what season in life I'm in within the movement, the powerful man, where we're going, what we're trying to do. And what also that does is, because you've seen her, my wife was here just yesterday, is that puts her in a position of wanting to contribute. So we had all the guys here for the Alpha Reset that were here, and you and Colton were off playing. And so Aaron and I were here folding towels and doing stuff around there and getting the house prepped.
Beautiful.
But the point is, now she's engaged, right? That's really the point, not just giving you a hard time. But she's engaged, and now she feels vested in this, right? Because I've communicated. Here's the season. I'm going to be gone. Previously, I was gone for a couple weeks. Colton and I were traveling around North America. She knew it, right?
Yep.
And so she knew I'd be busy. Coming into the next season, I'll have more time with my family. As we're recording this podcast, as an example, that's going to free up my time elsewhere to spend time, to take my kids to soccer games and to do all those things that are important to me on there. But I do that by 1, determining what I want. 2, looking at the areas. 3, communicating them so I don't have misinterpreted expectations. And sometimes I'm going to adjust those, based on what my partner, my wife wants, right? We're in a partnership in this life. And then what I'll do is I set boundaries. These are the boundaries that are for me.
Yep.
I'm not available Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 5 a.m. to 6:15 or 6:30 a.m. because I'm working out. I'm doing CrossFit. And then after that, with the exception of a meeting I have with you on Monday, I'm not available until 8 a.m. because I'm with my family. And that's period. And once you set those boundaries, you'll be amazed that after a little bit of time teaching, people respect them.
Big time, yeah.
They respect your boundaries, and that creates that space where you have that balance. And now every morning, with the exception of the Monday that I meet with you, is I'm with my kids. I'm making breakfast. I'm singing, dancing around the kitchen with them. I'm pulling them out of bed. Sometimes I'm, cuddling with them longer. And I have that moment until they go to school. So they'll wake up always knowing their dad takes them to school or their dad's there for them. And then afterwards, the same thing is when the kids are done, I make sure my work is in a confined area, of time, block of time that reflects my balanced priorities. And then I'm able to spend more time with my family, and then date night with my wife, which we try to do 1 to 2 times a week. We don't always hit it, but we try to. Sometimes date night is checking into a hotel, right? That's fun too. Or sometimes date night is really just going down and watching Netflix and just chilling out together.
Yeah.
But the idea is having that time and making sure that balance reflects your calendar and reflects your priorities.
Yeah, I think something that's also important here, at least it is for me, is making sure I'm reviewing my week. Because
you do a good job of that.
Yeah, when I don't do that, it's very easy for the weeks just pass on by.
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks later, I don't even realize I'm out of balance.
Yeah.
And it happens sometimes because I end up working the weekend or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But even then, if I work the weekend, I try and make sure I get it on the Monday morning, because if I don't do it on the Monday morning, that's it, it's gone. As soon as Monday starts, there's no way I'm reviewing my week on the Tuesday. It just my head's just not even there.
Yep.
So when I review my week, it really helps me to be able to just check in and course correct. And there's a direct relationship between when I do that and these tiny little micro adjustments that I get to make versus when I don't. And then slowly but surely getting swept up and swept away and becoming a little bit more reactive, quite honestly, than I'd like to be.
Yeah, we should do a training on that. Now you mentioned it, because I think men don't know how to review their week. When you say that, I feel guilty because I haven't reviewed my week in 2 months, maybe. Been traveling and everything else. It's on my calendar, But I mean, I don't know about you, but I have these things on my calendar that I just skip over constantly. I even color code them in a way so that I know I can skip over it. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny the amount of time I've spent color coding my calendar, thinking it's going to get me to do the thing.
I got a couple of them that are pretty good. I have one that's kind of light blue color that's it's an in-person meeting, or I have to do it. And it could be, a business meeting, a coaching client, a dentist appointment. The other colors, I just kind of breeze over them.
Yeah, the colors made no difference to me. It took me 2 hours to do on my calendar. It made no difference.
Yeah. Well, I think we should do a training on reviewing the week, because to your point, when you review your week, you get your scoreboard, right? Your score on how you're doing. And I think a lot of us miss that, especially when we talk about work-life balance. How'd you do? Did you hit it? Or did you get sucked back into the firefighting in your business, or being the man that always solves the problems, or whatever else it may be? That gives you a way of reflecting and looking back. And it's funny. Now you say that, what brings up to me is, and this is away from work-life balance, but it ties it in a little bit. We have a thing we do at my dinner table, which I do with the guys when I'm with them, as you know, is what are your magic moments? And some people have a hard time remembering the day, and they're focused on a couple of things that didn't get done, or the negative things versus the things that did happen that were great. I know I get into that a lot. Everybody does. And so your daily magic moments can get rolled into weekly. What are your wins? What are your lessons? What are things that you can improve upon? What, did you achieve your goals? And for businessmen, you also can reflect on your business numbers. What was cash collected? How many calls were booked? How's marketing doing? You can do all of these things in there. But then also maybe you want to give yourself a score as a dad, or a score as a husband. How many times did you catch your wife in the act of doing something right versus doing something wrong? That's a big difference, right?
I'll have her give you a score.
Yeah. Nah. I'll skip that one. But I mean, these are all ways you can do it. I mean, you could, if you're in a great relationship, you could ever give what's your score in the bedroom?
Yeah, what's your love tank, right? You've done that with Erin before. Hey, I've done it with Amelia a few times. How happy have you been in the relationship this week?
Yep.
1 to 5. Real quick. I'm thinking it's easily a 4. 2.
Yeah.
2? Okay.
What did your parents do?
It's a shit test. It's a shit test.
So it's not me. Clearly, her love tank has somebody else is screwing up somewhere. Yeah, but that's what you do, right? So when you talk about this whole idea of balance, I think the word itself screws so many people up.
In social media too, I think as well, people see people living a certain lifestyle. It's like, that's what it looks like. Come on.
One of the guys posted something, and so we have a private, for the people listening that aren't part of our programs, we have a private community, and we have one of these, they have rooms in it, right? Like different categories that you can get invited to. But we have one that's open to everybody. It's called Just for Fun. Call it like the water cooler, where you can post jokes and satire, whatever. And this guy has a picture, and it shows like social media versus reality. Did you see that one?
No.
I was scrolling through it. Sometimes I just need a stress break, and I just scroll through it. And it shows this guy, young man in his 20s or so, and he's lying on the beach. He's got his sunglasses, shirt off, and then they have the picture of it expanded. And this guy is in the middle of like a dirt field, and he's got a towel that looks like sand, and he's sitting there. And that's what life's like with social media, right? It's all this BS. In fact, some of the biggest influencers right now are AI generated, and people don't even know it. They're not even real people that they're following and trying to live up to this thing. Yeah, I can go down that rabbit hole. However, going back to work-life balance, decide what it is you want.
Yep.
Check and reflect, what is your calendar reflecting? Right? Are you doing it? Is it equal? If not, change it and see what changes you have to make over time. Third step, in my opinion, is make sure it works for your family, right? Get consensus, buy-in, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't mean you have to do it. If your wife says, you need to be home by 5 and you disagree, well, you have a conversation about it and set expectations and set boundaries. And then on that point, to your, which I like, is reflect, right? I'll call it reflect, review, reflect.
Yeah,
reflect on the week and see how it all went. And then at that point, you can adjust.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Because, to your point, going back full circle, balance is, things are not going to be created equal. The way I imagine balance is some scales, nicely balanced, right? The two things on there just weigh the same.
I know you did, yeah.
It's just not the real, it's just, and if that's the idea you have in your head, you're setting yourself up for stress, frustration, and failure right from the get-go, right? So the idea of the key blocks and the rhythm and the flexibility and communication and such is so key. And this is what we've seen work with the guys time and time again. When they get this kind of philosophy in place and they have a system to check in and be it the coil, Chart of Intentional Living, or their coach, right? Or the other men, they have the support systems in place to help them hold that standard high. And it's a real recipe for success.
Absolutely. So, gentlemen, if any of this is resonating with you, we recommend, of course, in the moment of insight, taking massive action. But go look at it. And in fact, if you want more information on the coil or the Chart of Intentional Living, go ahead and email in to vip@thepowerfulman.com. Let them know. Tim's got a great training on the coil, and I'll be happy to send that your way. So, guys, as always, we're in your corner. Whatever you do, take some massive action.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for this episode. But as I always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action. You see, there are two types of men that listen to a podcast like this. Those that go on from one podcast or show to another, just hoping things are going to change and realizing that they're going to be in the same place month after month, year after year. You see, I was this guy, so I completely get it. You may just not be ready. But there's also a second man that listens to a show just like this. And this is a guy who takes massive action so they can shorten the learning curve, compress time, and get results to be the wolf. See, wolf is an acronym for wise, open, loving, and fierce. Now, ask yourself, which one am I? And just be honest with yourself there. And there's no judgment on my end, but if you're ready to move from deactivated deer mode, which is defend, excuse, explain, react, to activated wolf, wise, open, loving, and fierce, then go over to thepowerfulman.com/grow and go there now. In fact, I'll make it super easy for you. I will even put the link right in the description here so you can just click it and go over there now to learn more. Guys, in the moment of insight, take massive action. Go from deactivated to activated because like I said, life is too short for average. And I'll see you on the next episode.